So I'm going to talk today about a discovery we made just this summer, which is a periodic motion in an chaotic phase of our reaction system of the Belousov Zhabotinsky reaction. And this was until up to my knowledge not yet discovered before. There were some people working on that system. The Italian group who is working mainly on this unstirred ferroin-catalyzed reaction system, which is, as I said, not stirred. But they made a more numerical simulation, and they found out that there must be some convective motions. And what I did, I checked these motions, and I actually could find these convective motions within the chaotic phase. And that is the interesting part of the chemical reaction system. So it's something like periodic within a chaotic phase, which at the first point sounds a bit contradictory, but we will now see in detail what, how is that meant actually. So before I go into the details, I wanted first to look at the word chaos. It is originally a Greek word, chaos. Comes also from the Greek mythology. Someone is interested in that. It is what was meant the state before Gaia, before the earth was formed, and in fact before everything else. So it was the state before everything started. And we have interestingly also in the Bible something similar to that state, which is in Hebrew it's called tohu vabohu, and is sometimes also used in the German language as a description for a chaotic state, for example, for room or something else. And it also is referring to the condition of the earth before the creation of light in the Genesis. So if we ask what is chaos, then if we look back to this old definition, so it's something like emptiness or the absence of light. Or to put it in other words, it is something where we cannot see anything. And that is maybe also connected to what we today understand about chaos. But chaos is not the only word used for this type of situation. There is also another word which is sometimes used, which is randomness. Randomness in German, it's called Zufall, is strongly related to the Latin word accidens. And that itself is related to the Greek word synverikos, which is in fact defined by Aristotle. I think he talks in the book of Topi about it. I'm not sure at the moment. And it is something like one of the properties of a thing. Yeah, you have this accidents, and then you have the essentia, which would be in ousia in Greek, and in Latin would be called essentia. And an object can have these two properties. And one thing is a thing that can change and is not connected to the essentia of the thing. And the other thing, the essentia itself, is connected. So let's give an example. You have a chair. Yeah, this would be the essentia of the thing. But this chair could have different colors, different materials, whatever, and that would be the accidents, yes. And it's not to be confused with accident in English. There's somehow also a relation there. So if we look at this randomness, so we could also here see this not connectedness, could be also seen in the absence of a pattern or order. So it's somehow similar to what is meant by chaos. But it's different point of views here. So now we have seen at least some of these two aspects of what chaos or randomness could be. And now let's look at where do we encounter chaos. And sometimes, at least on my desk, it's looking more or less like this. So chaos can also be encountered on the desk. And I just show you here the desk of Albert Einstein to, yes, tell you that we are not the only one having chaotic desks. So where do we encounter chaos? Well, there is one very famous example, which is the weather system. In the 50s and 60s of the last century, there was a scientist, Lawrence, who was actually trying to model the weather system, and he found out, actually, is the famous butterfly effect. He found out that actually the weather system is a chaotic system. And how does this chaoticity is represented here? Well, after a certain time, it's not anymore predictable what the weather will be. And we know it from everyday life that there is this forecast. Maybe you've already checked out, for example, on Google, it gives a forecast of 10 days. Yeah. And if we look at this graphic here, we can see that you can surely give a forecast for 10 days, but the probability that this forecast will be right is very low. We can see here the trajectories starting from, it's written here down 7th of June, it goes until 21st of June. And we can see this is an ensemble simulation where small changes in the initial conditions lead to very big changes after a certain amount of time. So if we start, let's say on the 7th of June, we have a temperature of around 13 degrees. When we start with these initial conditions and we run our simulation of the weather system, then on 21st June, we would have a range between almost 0 degree and 20 degrees of forecast, which is more or less very, broad, let's say. So how to say, the weather system is indeed a chaotic system, and we have this sensitivity to the initial conditions, which sometimes is with, you have surely heard about it, there is a butterfly beating its wings and leads to a tornado on the other side of the earth. This is more or less the picture which is given here. Well, so weather system is one example, but we can encounter chaos also in other systems, like the beating of an heart. It's very interesting also to see here. One would actually think that a regular heartbeat should be something good, but is actually the opposite, at least in certain sicknesses, that if you get a kind of quasi-periodic motion of the heartbeat, you're actually having a disease. So you can, from this heartbeat curve, identify if you're a healthy person or if you have a kind of disease. So this is also very developed in the last 50 years, the analysis of this time series, where you can actually get information about the state, so also chaotic systems. So that's very interesting with the heartbeat. We can see that also in brain waves. We have here on the top of the figure a normal resting state, where we have here the different types of brain waves you can register. And down in yellow, we see the brain waves in a certain type of epileptic attack. And we can clearly see here that in contrast to the upper one, this behavior is quite chaotic. But that's another example where you can encounter chaos. Let's come just to investigate a bit, what is this chaos? Let's look at a very also famous dynamical system. It's a logistic map. It's in fact a discrete system which evolves in time steps. And if you look at it, it has mathematically the form of a non-linear combination. We have xn, xn, so xn squared. We have a non-linear formula here. And we have here a parameter lambda, which can have the values from 0 to 4, which is actually, by changing this value, we can move in the direction of chaos or back to periodicity. So let's have a look at the system. If we start with this system with the value of lambda, which is equal to 2, we have a very unspectacular system. We have a one single fixed point, which is constant. If we increase the value of lambda up to 3.48, for example, just giving some examples here, we have already a periodic signal which has an orbit of 4. It goes via 4 points and then repeats itself. So this is periodic motion. And then if we increase this value up to 4, we have already a system which is far from periodic, it's already chaotic. Even though if you look at it, you can see some repeating patterns, but they never repeat in a very, let's precise way. Yeah? So we have here a kind of chaotic system. And if we look at this system, we can identify two very important aspects, I would call them, of chaotic systems. Let's look first at the sensitivity to the initial conditions. We have seen here already before in the weather system, but let's look at this system. We start with 3 different initial conditions. They are very close to each other, 0.35, then 1, then 2. And we start down here, that is shown in the lower part of the figure on the left, the evolution of the system. And if we look at the first 2, 3, 4, 5 points, the evolution is almost identical. But then at the 6th, 7th, 8th point, they start to diverge. And this is what is called the sensitivity to the initial condition. And remember, we're still in the case of a chaotic system. And we start with different initial conditions. We find a sensitivity to this, and this is, if we come back to the predictability, which means here, the predictability ends after 5 steps. The first 5 steps, they're still forecastable, they're more or less the same, but then we lose this information of predictability. And this is what is generally known as the sensitivity to initial condition. This is one of the aspects of chaos. Maybe Michner will tell us later a bit more about the mathematical aspects of the chaos. But at the moment, I wanted to look at this part of chaotic system. But then the same system can also create a randomness. If we look now at this system, one time we have, as we have seen for a period 4 motion, which is periodic, it's the upper panel. And in the lower, we have the chaotic version. And if we now put just a line, arbitrarily chosen line, more or less in the middle of the system, and we write down now, every time the system is down, we write ein U für unten, for German down, and we write an O für oben, for up, when it's up. And if we do all this, then we will see that we will get in the periodic signal, we will get a periodic change of up and down, up and down. And if we do the same thing at the chaotic system, we will get a time sequence, if you want, of letters, which is actually kind of random. So we can, with one system, create sensitivity to initial conditions, but at the same time, we can also, just by looking at the system in a different way, we can create a randomness. And this is just to show you that chaos has different aspects, and it looks like that it depends how you look at the system or what type of chaos you will get. And this is actually exactly what I just said. So let's go a bit more into the physical domain. We have here, we see here the Rayleigh-Bénard instability. This is what generally happens if you have the 2 plates, a liquid between 2 plates where the lower one is, for example, heated, so you create a gradient of temperature, and if a certain difference of this temperature, you will be able to form these convection rolls. This is what you see, for example, when you're cooking rice. And what we can see here, that after a certain temperature difference, the periodic state of the system, which is on the right side, turns to an aperiodic state. And this can be characterized by the x component of the velocity field, which is shown right under here. This is, by the way, numerical simulation of the system. And if you look at this, you can make along this coordinate here at a certain value, make a cut, and you can analyze this motion. You will get a time series. You can analyze this motion. This is what is generally done to find out if a signal is periodic or not. You make a fast Fourier spectra, and if you can find very characterized strong peaks, which is here on the right side visible, then you can say this system is periodic. And we can see on the other hand, here on the left, where the motion is not anymore perfect periodic, but still not yet completely chaotic, because we have still these main frequencies, which we have seen on the other hand. But a second frequency was created. So this is kind of a transition to a chaotic state. Okay, so far about a little introduction about chaos and chaos in physical systems. Now let's come to our reaction system. This is the Belousov Zhabotinsky reaction. Was discovered in the 50s of the last century by Boris Belousov, then later was analyzed by Zhabotinsky, a physicist. And mainly it is the cyclic bromination of an organic species in an acidic environment where you need the help of a catalyst, which is mainly ferroin. It is an iron complex. And here up you can see the different states. This is the nice thing about the reaction, it's very visible. You can see either blue and red. And if you put it in a very shallow Petri dish, you can even get these so-called chemical waves. They move over the surface. Here is the reaction mechanism. I will not go into the details. If there is any question later, please ask them. It's mainly an activator inhibitory system from a chemical point of view. So what about chaos in this reaction? As I said, it was very famous in the 70s and 80s, so there was a lot of research done on this system. And in 84, there was the first time when there was a chaos detected in the Belousov Zhabotinsky reaction. And they found in this spatial configuration where it's a very thin layer in a Petri dish, where there are no convections, that chaos can appear. And on the other hand, in the other configuration, which is shown on the right-hand side in the beaker, they found already in 82, there is also another type of chaos. So sometimes these types of chaos are called temporal and spatial chaos. Yeah? Temporal because it's something that happens in space, and spatial, yes, spatial because it happens in space, and temporal because it has a temporal aspect which has not an effect on the space. The space is homogeneous, like in the beaker here. And just yeah, kind of recently in the 90s, this group around Mauro Rustici, Federico Rossi, and Marcello Budroni, they discovered that if you leave the system in a beaker unstirred, because here in this system it was constantly stirred. I forgot to say that if the system is constantly stirred, we get this type of temporal chaos. But this group discovered that if you leave the system unstirred, actually the system evolves in a way which is very complex. And when we were investigating the system in 2010 in this way, we even thought we discovered a new effect until we later found out that it was already discovered by this group. And the effect is actually the following. We see here 3 phases. We have a first periodic phase, but at the end of this phase, we see more or less that the system dies out. There is not anymore a color change. And we have here some kind of chaotic transient, which in the beginning we wouldn't think about, is that it will be a transient. You believe, okay, this thing goes now to the equilibrium and will not come back. But the interesting part is that after some time, this is around 1 and 2 hours, depends on the temperature also a bit, this periodicity comes back. So it's a kind of rebirth of the system. And that was very interesting to find. And as I said, it was investigated by this group around Mauro Rustici. They even could identify this transition to the chaos, which follows a Ruhr-Tachens-Neuhaus scenario. And originally, I wanted also to go a bit into the details about different types of transition to chaos there could be. But if there is a question, I can tell you later about it. Anyways, this is a specific way how to go to chaotic systems. So how you go from periodicity to chaoticity. And this is the so-called Ruhr-Tachens-Neuhaus scenario. Now let's see what we have discovered. We take the same system. Normally they are investigated in so-called cuvettes, which have a diameter 1 per 1. The height is around 5 centimeters. So you get around 5 millimeters of volume. And they are put normally in a photospectrometer. Sometimes they put a magnetic stirrer under, then you have this stirred system, or just without, and you get this evolution we have just seen before. But it's always covered in a photospectrometer, so normally you don't look at the spatial component of the system. And what we have done now is we chose a very specific type of cuvette, which is quite slim. It has just 0.5 centimeters of spessor. And in this way, it is also broad. We could investigate this spatial evolution of the system. In the beginning, we didn't know what to expect. But then we got a very interesting observation. Before I show you the video, I wanted to show you again what we can see. This is already extracted from the system we just described before. We have a first periodic system. So it's actually in the cuvette I showed you before. And this is the extraction of the color channel. So we now make just a video and we take out the red channel, which is more or less the sensitivity of the indicator, and we get this quite good reconstruction of the color change here, very periodic in the beginning, and then starts the chaotic phase. And if you look again at the Fourier spectrum, you get here in the periodic case up on the left a periodic signal with harmonics, and then all the other spectra you can see here are, in fact, if you look at the power, the power is something like 100 times less, and the signal is very, let's say, erratic, and there is not a very clear periodicity visible. Just a way to characterize chaos, but as I said before, it is maybe not the best way to characterize chaos because we have seen periodicity in this type of chaos. So we are now looking, and maybe Michner will later talk a little bit about it, how to better characterize this so-called chaos, which when we look from another set is actually not a chaos. Okay, here I just went a bit more. Okay, now it's time for the video. Let's stop this and we share. There it is. Okay. All right. Is it visible? Are we here?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Go to the start. So I enhanced a bit the contrast, so the colors are not exactly what they look in real life, but just to make it more visible for you. So we start the system, and we have, in fact, this first periodic phase where there is not much, let's say, convective motion. Moment, why do you say that was not good? Okay, I'll try again. All right, yes. Now you should see this color change, and already a bit of convection starting around, but not yet that much.
Yeah. I don't see the movie, honestly.
What about the others?
I also don't see it. I only see your Anpassung und Effekte.
Okay. Also only
We can
that.
see your parameters, which are interesting, of course.
Okay. Wait a second. Why is I close it? Now you see it? No, no. There was a problem with the sharing. Wait a second. There was not.
I
sharing.
think.
It was not sharing correctly. Now you see?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So now you should see a first color change.
Now we see it.
Yes, perfect. And you see some black dots. These are actually bubbles which are formed in the reaction. And they are due to a gas which is created later. And now you should already see some type of convective motion. Now it's a bit covered by the bubbles. So there is some convection roles involving. And interestingly, they're not yet so clear. If I will fast forward, at a certain point, all the bubbles go up. That's also very interesting, and I do not yet know why is this the case. Because later they are not going to be formed again so much. Okay. So I showed a similar video already at the Conference of Complex System, but this one is already a bit higher resolution. I changed the video camera in the system. So we can actually see there is some kind of convective periodicity given in the system. I will fast forward a bit more. Yes, here. So there is also competition between two convective roles and sometimes only one. Yes. And so on. And later then there is back again this periodicity. So you can actually see that the convection becomes less important and the periodicity, so the chemical reaction becomes more important again. Yeah, maybe so much for the video. And actually already at my end, let's see what I still wanted to tell you. Yeah, actually just what I said before, that we have different types of configuration of convection cells. Also important, I realized that just recently we have, which is not much surprising, but there is also a dependency on the temperature of the system. So the lower the temperature, the less ordered are these structures. Yes, and here I just show where the specific moment I could observe this periodic motion in the actually chaotic regime. Yes. Okay. All right. Yeah, maybe that much. And I thank you for your attention. This is our group. I described it before a bit, and I'm open for questions, please.
Yeah. I don't know if there are some problems with your sharing, because now we have just you know, okay, now it's fine.
Okay. So are there any questions?
Yes, I have one question.
Please.
So you see these patterns in the chaotic phase between the changing color regimes.
Yes.
Have you had a look at the very beginning of the reaction when you have this before the color changing happens? Is it the same or?
Wait a sec. I go back to the video, then we know what you talk about. A second. I think I know what you mean. Yes, I did.
Because there's some kind of induction period at the beginning, which is different from the.
Actually, with this
in between periods.
Actually, with the ferrin indicator, there is no induction period.
Ah, I see. I'm more used to with the serum. So
with the serum, yes. I was also sometimes working with the serum. There you have the induction period, but here this is actually really the first moment. It starts to change. It starts immediately. That is also for the registration a kind of problem. I have to be very fast to put everything in because it starts immediately. Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, I see. Interesting.
Okay. And maybe one thing I have not yet mentioned, why we can actually see these convections because the only thing we can see here is the indicator, so the color change. So my answer for this, I'm not sure if it's right, is that in the convective phase, the convection velocity is much higher than the velocity of the change of color, and that is why these parts of oxidation states are just moved around and we see them. This is my kind of interpretation, but maybe there is another one. Anyways, yes, thank you for the question.
It was very interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation.
Are there any other questions? Okay, then I would say we are about to enter the first break.